Welcome to today's National Archives Know Your Records program. My name is Andrea Bassing-Matney. We are broadcasting live from the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. We're so glad that you have joined us today. Before we begin the program, I have a few tips on how to participate in the presentation. For those of you who are with us in the building, we ask that you hold on to your questions until the very end of the presentation. And when you do have questions, please use these microphones in the aisle. For those of you who are participating online on this YouTube webpage, you can also ask questions by first logging into the chat feature, typing your questions in, and then I will ask the presenter those questions again at the end of her presentation. You will also find three hot links to today's presentation. One includes the presentation slides, the other is a handout, and we also have live captioning. So today's program is Introduction to the Captured German Records at the National Archives. Rachael Salyer will discuss records from Record Group 242, the National Archives collection of foreign records seized, and offer strategies for starting your historical or genealogical research using the captured German records. Rachael is currently an archivist in the Textual Processing Unit at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. In addition, she assists the reference unit in responding to inquiries about World War II and captured German records. Her career with us started in the Textual Research Room, but before coming to the National Archives, Rachael was in Massachusetts and worked primarily as a professor of German at Clark University in Worcester and professor of English at American International College in Springfield. She has also been employed as an archivist at the American Antiquarian Society in Worcester and in archives and special collections at Springfield College, also in Springfield. Rachael earned a BA in English and German from Oklahoma Baptist University before completing an MA in German Studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Rachael has also completed an MS in Library and Information Science at Simon's College in Boston. And currently, she is a PhD candidate in German Studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She plans to defend her dissertation in the spring of 2017, and we wish her well. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Rachael Salyer.
Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction. Thank you to everyone who's here in the room with us today, and thank you as well to those of you who are joining us online. So as Andrea said, today's discussion is really an introduction, a true introduction or overview to the captured German records at the National Archives. My goal with the presentation really is just to introduce you to some of the records and to some of the resources that are available to you as a researcher sort of coming to this topic for the first time. So there are records here for researchers of all varieties, researchers who are interested in genealogy and family history, scholars, historians, and also a lot of resources that are very helpful for educators as well that can be used in your courses or in classroom projects. So here's a quick overview of what we hope to accomplish today. Usually, if people know anything about the captured German records at the National Archives, the two things that they think of are that they're World War II German records and that they're in microfilm. Those are both true. They're not the whole truth, though, and so I hope to be able to provide you with some extra information as you start tackling your research projects related to these records. This image, by the way, is an image from one of the centers where the documents were scanned, where the original captured records were scanned. This is from Alexandria, I believe. This is an image from our collection. And we'll talk about those scanning centers a little more later in the presentation, but just so you can sort of get a little glimpse of what we're talking about here with these records. Beyond that, we'll talk about some quick getting started tips, the textual records, of course, the microfilm and paper records, analog records there, and also the other media that are available to you when you're accessing these records. There are sound recordings, motion pictures, still pictures, maps and charts, and things like that. So we'll touch on all of those, and then at the end, we'll briefly discuss some additional resources and additional record groups, related records that tie into the captured German records, or that supplement, not necessarily supplement, but that coordinate with them or correspond to them well, complement them, I suppose. So this is just a quick overview of the record group. The captured German records are not their own independent record group. They're part of a larger group, Record Group 242, which is the National Archives collection of foreign records seized. This record group was established in 1947. Initially, the records were just these World War II records, things that had been seized by various military organizations, by the Department of State, and other allied forces during the war. The documents were originally used for military intelligence, for strategy, for planning. They were also used as evidence in war crimes trials, and also have been used to help try to rehome looted art and other cultural artifacts. So there's a lot here. And they then became part of the National Archives starting in 1947. Most of them are in the language of their country of origin, so we're talking about a lot of records in German today. I don't want you to find that daunting, though, because especially as a first-time researcher, perhaps you're doing genealogical research, a lot of the records that relate to genealogy in particular are forms or index cards, and it's easy to find information on them even if you're not perhaps too familiar with the German language itself. There are things like the birth dates or names, birthplaces, and things like that. So you can identify useful information in these records even if you're not a fluent German speaker. There's some other records in this group from Korea, from Grenada as well. They joined the record group a little later. And then you can see here as well, there's a great variety of records, not just textual records. As for the German records in particular, not just the whole record group, but specifically the German records, of course the bulk of the records are related to the National Socialist regime, to the era right before World War II and World War II itself. There are, however, records from earlier German governments. Some of these records, military and government records, date back to the 19th century. There are a few that are as old as the 17th century. So we're not just talking about World War II here. There are also records that the Germans had seized from other European governments that were then in turn seized by Allied forces. And these records have also been supplemented by records from the Department of State and from the Navy as well. So there's a lot that has come together here to create the captured German records as we know them. So, where to start? If you want to get a good picture, a good umbrella overview view of these records, the best place to start is at the Guide to Federal Records. That's true not only for Record Group 242, but for any record group that you're hoping to research. The Guide to Federal Records is available on our website, and I should mention the handout that goes along with the presentation has these websites and links listed in it. So the Guide to Federal Records is searchable via record group number and keywords, so if you're not sure what the record group number is, that's no problem at all. Here you can see a quick snapshot of Record Group 242. There's a quick table of contents which acts as an outline, and then there are links to a more expanded description of the record group. So again, when you're looking for a big picture view of this collection, this is where you want to go so that you can see what there is, get a general idea. I've pointed out here some of the different elements. There's the information about the administrative history, the finding aids, notes about language and copyright, and then it gets into the actual description of the records, the formats, the dates, the series titles, and things like that. So, big picture, Guide to Federal Records. When you are looking for something more detailed, when you're looking for information about specific series or specific items even in a series, you'll want to go to our catalog. The National Archives catalog is an amazing resource. It's where all of the links to the digital objects are, to sound recordings, to images that have been scanned, to digitized documents. You'll find information there, much more description about these records than just here at the Guide to Federal Records, but this is again a good sort of big picture view. So talking about the records themselves, we're going to start with the microfilm. That is the sort of bulk of this collection of these records are microfilm. They are considered textual records, so if you are looking for reference assistance with these records, you'll want to speak with the reference staff in the textual records section. These records are all housed at A2 in College Park, Maryland. You can visit the microfilm reading room at College Park 6 days a week. There's no reference staff available to you in any of the research rooms on Saturdays, but there are reference staff available to help you Monday through Friday. And the microfilm reading room is a self-service room, so you're able to access the microfilm reels, look at the indexes, look at the guides, look at the finding aids and things like that, and then actually get the reels of microfilm and look at them really at your own pace. You're not required to wait for pull times and things like that, so that's sort of a nice feature of accessing these records. So when you're getting started with the microfilm, there are over 70,000 reels of microfilm that tie into the captured German records, or that are considered part of the captured German records. That is over 7 million feet, or over 1,300 miles of microfilm, which can be a bit daunting, I think, to researchers who are just getting started. So what you should do in preparation for this is use all of the online tools that we have. Use those tools in advance so that you can sort of find what you need to look for and do a little bit of sort of pre-visit research. There's a lot that you can only do in the archive, but there is a great amount of research and a great amount of resources available to you online. So I have, just to show you one of the places you can go, some links here. So this is an overview of all of the series of microfilm that we have in the captured German records. It is quite extensive, lots and lots of information. Many of them, though, have links here embedded in the list to guides to these records. So you can find extremely detailed information about these series online. You can even, in some cases, find roll lists online for them. So this is a great place to start your microfilm research. And we're working on getting even more guides and finding aids available. The guide to the naval records, for instance, was just digitized, and it's going to be online very soon. So that's a big project that some of the archivists have been working on. They're very proud of it, and it's going to be a great resource for people who are looking at the naval records in particular here. Okay. So this list, these guides, a great place to start narrowing down from 70,000 rolls to the 1 roll that you need, or the 10 rolls that you need. So as you saw on the website, these microfilm series are typically arranged by the location where they were filmed. So we saw the picture on the first slide of the Alexandria Center. Those were particular series that were filmed there. They were filmed all over the place. Some were filmed in Germany, some were filmed in Britain, and some were filmed here in the US. So you can see some examples here of that. And again, just to note, the reason we have the microfilm is because the original documents have, in almost all cases, been returned to their country of origin. So the original documents are available in German archives, for instance, for many of them at least. So what I want to do when we're talking about these microfilm records is just highlight a few of the series that are available. As you saw on the website that listed the microfilm series, there is a lot of information there. I'm certainly not going to go through it all, but I wanted to point out a few things just to give you some examples of the type of information that is out there. So from the series that were filmed at Whaddon Hall in the United Kingdom, there's information from the German Foreign Office and Foreign Ministry. There's information about specific German diplomats, and these are some of the records that actually date back to the 19th century. So we're not just talking here about, again, the World War II or the Nazi records, but much, much older. There's information here, documents from the Reichschancellery as well. We also have some, and as I mentioned, the Navy records here. These were filmed in London. The guide will be online soon. Then we have documents that were filmed in Berlin. The Berlin documents are typically divided into 2 categories: the biographic ones that relate to the people, obviously, and the non-biographic records. The biographic records, which I'll talk about in just a minute, are a great resource for genealogists or people looking for information about specific individuals. The non-biographic Berlin information here is primarily about the National Socialist parties, organizations, affiliations, different government agencies, military agencies, you name it, it's here. So these are just some examples. You see some of the Reich ministries and government agencies. The RKK there, that's the Ministry of Culture. We have Ruscha, which I'll talk about in a second. That's the race and settlement organization of the SS that was there to enforce racial purity among the SS officers. The RMVP, that's the propaganda ministry. RWM, that's Wirtschaft, that's the economic ministry, and of course the SS there as well. Some of the individuals and corporations who are involved here, there are papers related to the Friedrich Flick concern. Friedrich Flick was an industrialist. He was very wealthy. His company was involved in steel manufacture, in coal, and eventually he became part of the Daimler-Benz Corporation. So there's papers related to that organization. There's also information from the Krupp-Drückenmüller GmbH, which is a corporation. Krupp is part of ThyssenKrupp now, so it's another industrialist. Actually, they do steel manufacture. A lot of the railroads that were built across the U.S. were built using steel from this corporation. So there's information about those kinds of corporations and enterprises, also about certain individuals. For example, Julius Streicher, he founded an anti-Semitic newspaper, Der Stürmer. We have some papers related to him here as well. So again, this is not by any means an exhaustive list, but you can see that there's a great variety of resources available to you. Some further examples, some of the things that were filmed in Alexandria, where we saw the picture of those documents, they were not just about sort of the higher-ups in the Nazi Party, but some of these records pertain to regional and even local offices, so you can really find sort of fine details here, not just sort of the overall picture, a big picture, but there's lots of sort of smaller organizations that are represented in these records as well. Again, more private businesses and institutions. One of the private individuals, for instance, is Theo Morell. He was the private physician of Hitler, so there's documents that relate to him here, other corporations and things as well. One thing I wanted to point out to you is that although many of these records are only available in microfilm right now, there are a lot of digital records. And one of those, this miscellaneous lists of and registers of German concentration camp inmates, the list was compiled by the International Tracing Service, and the Archives has a copy of the series, but it's also available to you to look at online through Fold3, which is an ancestry company. They're in the process of digitizing the series now. So I can show you sort of an example of what some of those documents look like. So you can see just a sampling of the documents that are available. Again, you can see, as I mentioned about the language earlier, these are forms that were filled out, and so it's easy to sort of pick out the information that you're looking for. It's not just a dense block of text. I know it's difficult on the screen to read, but I promise it's much easier than just reading a full page here. Okay. So this is a project that's in process. More and more is going to become available, but there are a lot of resources and a lot of things that have been digitized already that are accessible to researchers just getting started, trying to find out what there is out there. Other records that relate to specific individuals, those were lists of concentration camp inmates and registers of concentration camp inmates. Other series, that relate to specific individuals are here in the Berlin Document Center biographic records section. So I mentioned that the records that were filmed in Berlin are sort of divided into two categories. The biographic ones include a lot of personnel files and personnel cards and forms and things like that. So there are the Ortsgruppenkartei, which are sort of regional party membership cards, Zentralkartei, again, membership cards. You can see that there's personnel lists for SS officers, for SS enlisted men, SA personnel files as well. and so forth. So lots of different examples here. When you are approaching this research as a genealogist, for example, and you're trying to find a specific individual, there is an index, there's a name index. It's available to you in the microfilm reading room at Archives 2. So you start with the name index. When you look up the name that you're interested in, it then directs you to the other series. So perhaps the person you've looked up is listed as an SS officer, and he's also in the Russia files. So then you would go to those guides, those role lists, and find the specific reels that you need. And there's staff in the research room who can help you, direct you through that process. So that's how you start to sort of narrow down here. They're arranged by organization, then into smaller series, and they're typically arranged alphabetically by family name. There are, however, a few instances where images had to be refilmed, and so they are listed out of order in the index, but that'll be obvious to you when you look at the index there. So, some examples. This is from the Einwandererzentrale. It's an immigration center. You could say these are applications for naturalization from ethnic Germans who came from other regions. So you can see the sub-series here are divided mostly by region, and there are some other sort of types of cards from this organization that are separated out as well. This example that I have here in the slides is an example from the first series. It's from an applicant from the USSR, or now former USSR, I should say. And you can see the type of information that's included, the last name or family name, the birth name, if the birth name happens to be different than the current family name, first name, birth date, place of birth. This one also includes information about parents, about one's marital status, when and where the person got married, who they got married to. So a lot of those kinds of details that would be useful to someone who's searching for information about individuals in his or her family. These are more documents, examples from the EWZ series. This here is a petition for naturalization. And again, it's divided out into different categories, so it has information about the education, it has information about military connections. There's information about, on this third page here, that is the dates and locations where this person lived, so each time they moved. That's all listed here. So there's fine details about the person's life that you can sort of pull out of these. I should also mention that not every file looks the same. Some are fuller than others. You might find just a single card with information about the person you're looking for. You might find 30 pages. It really does vary. And some of the forms are filled out more completely than others as well. But I've included these just as sort of a typical example of what you might find. Again, more examples from, this is actually the same person in this EWZ example. You can see that there's basically a family tree that's been drawn here. In this case, it's to prove the person's Germanness, German ancestry, because they're applying for naturalization. And then there's some certifications and signature pages as well. So just types of documents and types of information that are available in this series. One of the other frequently accessed series in the microfilmed records is the Russia series, which is the Rasse- und Siedlungshauptamt. Again, as I mentioned before, this was the sort of enforcement of German purity agency as part of the SS. So this has the citizen's name, his birth date, his place of birth, an ID number as well, and some certifications and signatures and things like that. And a third series, just as a third example of one of the many, many types of records that you can access here through the microfilm, in the microfilm reading room. This is from the Frauenschaft or Frauenwerk series, and it's a membership card. It's the paragraph of text there is an oath affirming her Germanness, and it also includes lines about that she doesn't have any Jewish ancestry or she's not of mixed race descent. And there's lines that say that she's not a Freemason and she doesn't belong to secret organizations and things like that. So this is sort of her affirmation of those things. And it includes a lot of biographical details. Her name, her birth date, birthplace, her address, where she lived, her marital status is here. And you can see this other second image is the reverse of it. So a lot of the text is actually bled through from the front side. But again, those are just a few examples, the EWZ, the Ruscha, and the Frauenschaft, Frauenwerk, of some of the series that contain biographic information that are available to you when you're conducting your research. So those were just a few of the microfilm examples. To talk about other records that are in sort of paper or analog format, there is some overlap between the records that exist in microfilm and that exist as sort of paper copies. In some cases, there are gaps. So if you are looking at a series that exists in both formats, you may want to check them both out so that you can see, to investigate what might be missing from one that's available in another to you. So these are just some examples of the series that exist in paper format. Some of these are photostats or copies. They're not all the originals. Again, they were used as military intelligence. They were used to help return looted art. They were used in war crimes trials and things like that. Related to the looted art, for example, you can see in our catalog, oops, this is documentation of artwork and cultural artifacts. You can zoom way in. Artwork and cultural artifacts, it's a record from the German military occupying France, and it traces a lot of the artwork, musical instruments, jewelry, literature, and things like that, other cultural artifacts that were taken from people of Jewish descent and from other organizations. It has a lot of information here. So these kinds of documents exist. They're not all part of this record group. There are some in other record groups as well, but the captured German records do have a lot of information about looted artwork, for example, is one of the bits of information that you can find here. Also, we have the records of the Luftgau commandos, which was part of the Luftwaffe, and here we have, we have the originals of these records because they pertain to downed Allied aircraft and Allied airmen who were taken as prisoners of war, for example. So we do actually have these original documents. Not all of them have been scanned, but some are available here online to you, so you can kind of see what kinds of records you might be finding if what you're looking for hasn't been digitized already. So let me zoom in a little to show you a closer look. So it's the information about the planes that were shot down, for example, the dates, where they were located, names of airmen and things like that can be found here. So one further example of what's available here as part of the records of the Luftgau commandos are these KU reports. These are, again, reports that relate to downed Allied airmen. In this case, this is a receipt for personal property from an American airman who was taken as a prisoner of war. So this is sort of the front and back of this page in the receipts. You can see he had a wristwatch here that he has signed for. This is a German list. He had a comb, he had a lighter, he had some coins, a photograph with him. Someone has at some point translated all of these things here very helpfully. Again, another receipt. This is he's signing for the few coins and the money that he had on his person when he was taken as a prisoner of war. So there are some really sort of specific, interesting, detailed documents that are available that you might not necessarily think about at first glance when you're thinking about the captured German records. This is, again, by no means exhaustive, but it is just sort of a sampling of the type of information that's available to you. So, beyond the textual records, there are records in a lot of other media: sound, motion pictures, maps, cartographic, still pictures. So let's take a look just at a few of those. Again, by no means exhaustive, but some examples here. The sound recordings, if you look at the website, there's a list of the recordings that are available. They're divided into 3 categories. You can see that: speeches, ceremonies, and monitored broadcasts, which would be intercepted broadcasts, things that the Nazis overheard, coded messages, some of it's like radio broadcasts and things like that that were intercepted by the Nazis. There's lots of information about these recordings available to you online, so there are really detailed, in-depth descriptions of them, so you know what to ask for when you actually come visit the archives. So when you're preparing to do your research, you can find a lot of information here. This is just an example of the list of speeches, for example. They're in alphabetical order. It has information about the dates, the person who gave it, perhaps a little event, the length of the recording, etc. Some of these have actually been digitized and are available to you through our catalog. So the digital sound recordings and then also some of the motion pictures that we'll talk about in a second. The fact that they're available for you for free through our catalog, the ones that have been digitized, that's a great resource for teachers, for educators to use during history lessons or in the classroom somehow. This is just a screenshot of what the catalog looks like. It's a speech by Himmler that he gave to a group of SS generals. And we can play a snippet of it just so you can see how it works in the catalog. So if you want to download the MP3, you certainly can do that. It also plays straight through the catalog.
Ehre sich zu erheben, Ihnen voran aus unseren Reihen unser alter Kamerad und Freund Obergruppenführer Eike.
So the whole speech is here. Many others as well. Just one other example, so you can sort of see the variety. This one is downloadable in 2 separate files, presumably because it's a longer speech. But this is a speech that Hitler gave when he was in Danzig. So lots of information here and actual recordings and things like that too for you. As far as moving images go, there are a lot of newsreels here at the archive. There are also military films that were made. There's actually Soviet television newsreels that had been captured by the Germans. Things about science and the German rocket experiments and such. So a good variety of films as well. They are, in many cases, described in great detail. You can see this is a description of just one specific newsreel. There's a lot that's going on in the newsreel, and so that is captured here in our catalog for you. So if you're looking for newsreel footage or moving pictures somehow that describe different scenes or that portray different scenes, these descriptions can help you find what you're looking for. You can see just another example of Hitler's triumphal return here. And some of these are also digitized and available for you through our catalog. Again, I can't stress enough how much information is there in the catalog, and these digital objects are there too. So these are just some screenshots from an Army Military Intelligence Division film. And these are some screenshots from a propaganda film, Volk im Krieg. So this is the German people hard at work during the war. And I'll show you just a brief snippet of that. Again, as with the sound recordings, the images, the moving images that are available online can be streamed or downloaded. So it goes through, and you can see here we have metal workers, and it goes on and moves into the German people. Again, it's a propaganda film, so they're all hard at work helping the war front and different industrial scenes, but then it moves on to more sort of household scenes in public transportation, and so forth. So we've talked about the textual records, the microfilm and the analog or paper versions. So we've talked about sound recordings, moving images. There are also maps and charts. Most of these are related to the military in some way. There are hydrographic charts. There are charts and maps from the Air Force, from the Navy, from the Army. One specific example of some of the maps that we have a copy of Göring's Atlas. And this is an AP image of the same atlas. It's a German version of it, so it's not the one that we have, but it's the same. It's the same edition, I suppose I should say. Okay. So just some examples again of beyond the microfilm, beyond the textual records too. And finally, we have many still pictures, slides, postcards, portraits, albums, still photography in some way. that are part of this collection of captured German records. And some of those have been digitized. Again, there's much more when you actually visit the archive, but you can get a general idea of what's available to you. So this is an image. You can see in the back the man with the white handkerchief. That is Ribbentrop. He was sort of high up in the German hierarchy. We have albums of images that he collected, and that's him and Stalin in the background watching the Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov sign a non-aggression pact. So, for example, they're all described in great detail in the catalog as well. This is from a series that documents a lot of cultural, social, sort of big moments in the National Socialist movement. And so you can see, obviously, it's Hitler in Paris there. There are images that document what was going on in the war with the military. So this one is Himmler visiting a prisoner of war camp in Russia. There are also images that were used as German propaganda by the German army and by the Waffen-SS as well as the Wehrmacht. So just an example of that as well. And one of the collections, or one of the sets of albums that we have, are photo albums that belong to Eva Braun. And so these actually they span about 3 decades from before World War I. Some of the images are that old, to 1944 or thereabouts. These are just a couple of examples of images from those albums, but you can see again the great variety of resources that are available to you as you research with the captured German records. So that covers it for those specific records, just our very quick, very sort of skimming over the surface to get an overview of the captured German records. These are some record groups that contain related records, that contain records that tie into World War II and that relate to the captured German records. It's not an exhaustive list, but this is a good place to expand your research once you've worked with the captured German records. And then finally, just a few websites that might be useful. These and many more are listed on the handout that goes with the presentation. For example, some of the things that aren't listed here but that are on the handout. Many of our archivists have written very detailed, useful blog posts, and those are available on our website, the text message blog, prologue as well. You can find information about the history of the collection. You can find information about specific records and things like that there. So there are many, many, many resources for you as you conduct your research in the captured German records. Right, so thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to give it a go.
Thank you so much, Rachel. While our on-site audience goes to the microphones in the aisles to ask the questions of you, I do have a question that came from our online audience.
In some of these documents.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say a couple of words to extend your remarks?
You were involved in the creation of the record group? Or let me have you discuss with Andrea what it is you'd like to add.
Sir, at this point, we're going to take questions from the audience, and we'll see if we have time at the end for additional comments. But at this point, we have questions, and I do have 2 that have come from our online audience. The first, sir, pardon me, I'm going to ask some questions, and then we'll see if we have time for your comments. Perhaps afterwards?
I'll add to your lecture a little bit.
Thank you very much. We'll see if we have time. Thank you. So the first question is about the EWZ records. Mm-hmm. And the person asks, is it possible to purchase the EWZ records in any format?
Yes, you can actually purchase the microfilm. There's information about it on the website as well. Typically, they're sold by the reel, and you can get them in a digital format if you want it on a CD instead of, maybe you don't have your own personal microfilm viewer at home. You can get a CD copy of that. Information about the prices and the process are available online.
Right, and when you say online, archives.gov.
Archives.gov, yes.
Thank you. And our next question is, Is there any connection between these records and similar World War II German records at the Library of Congress? I don't know if your research has taken you there.
Yeah, I do know that there is a small collection at the Library of Congress, and I assume that the history must be very similar in terms of documents that were captured by military, by intelligence agencies and things like that. I don't know the full history of their documents, though.
Fair enough. Before we take any comments, I would like to entertain more questions. Are there any questions from our on-site audience? And if you do, we ask that you make your way down to the microphone so we can capture you for the audience that's watching online. Thank you.
Capture me, I see. Could you walk us through a typical scenario of, you say you handle reference requests for people remotely, so can you walk us through a typical example of the types of information people tend to seek, what they might hope to gain, what information helps you in processing this? Could you just walk us through that?
Sure. The most common requests that I respond to are either questions that have come in through the Archives Inquirer system, which is a general system for asking questions, reference, and beyond, and also questions that have been emailed specifically to the textual reference archivists. I should mention, before I continue, there are reference archivists available in each of these divisions, so textual, still pictures, cartographic, motion pictures as well. So if you have questions, specific questions about your research, there's an excellent staff in each of these departments who can help you with that if you contact them through the Inquirer system or email them directly. So when I get the letters, most of what I respond to is people who are looking for information about individuals. And so I typically turn to the name index for the Berlin Document Center biographic records, and I'll look up to see if the name is even there. Sometimes the name isn't there, and that's as far as I'm able to go with that request without having more information. But if the name is there, then the series where that person's information can be found are listed. So I follow sort of the chain to find those reels. So for example, if a person's name is listed in the SS Officer series and also in the Ruscha series, I would turn to those guides, those roll lists, and find they're arranged typically alphabetically, so I would find the specific reels. And then it's just a matter of sort of brute force scrolling through the microfilm to find the documents that relate to the individual you're looking for. So I make scans or images sometimes, or I tell people what the frame numbers are so that they can find them or order them, tell them at least the real number if they're interested in ordering that online. That's the typical response that I work with is people looking for information about ancestors usually, but specific individuals.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We do have a gentleman in the audience who would like to add some comments, so I'll give you just a moment and then we'll finish up after your comment and question.
My name is Brad Patterson. I'm 95 years old. I arrived in Washington in June of 1945 and was in the State Department. And the State Department had a team of 2 or 3 people that we sent over to Berlin to collect German documents, particularly in the German Foreign Office. And as we were over there, a gentleman came up to our team and said, "My name is Schmidt." And he said, "I was Hitler's executive secretary and arranger of his trips and visits." And he said, "I have in a briefcase here all the minutes of Hitler's conversations, particularly with Franco and with Molotov, the German conversations with Molotov and so forth, all in German, but lengthy verbal, written down quotations from these meetings. For instance, Franco permitted the German Navy to use the ports of Spain. And so we said, we'd like to see these. And our team made copies of the Schmidt files And he said, if you get me to America or England, I'll give you these files. Well, he says, that's a deal. So we received these tin cans of taped of all the Schmidt files. And we were particularly interested in the files about Germans in Argentina. There were files there of the German embassy in Washington, where some American traders at the time, during the war, would come up to the German embassy and offer their help. It was that kind of files that were the Schmidt files. And I just wondered, do you have, as part of your collection here, do you have the Schmidt files?
I am not 100% sure, but if you were to inquire with the reference staff, they could give you that answer.
I don't know them myself, but there were very valuable files out of this period with this guy who was Hitler's executive secretary and wrote them all down.
Well, thank you for your input. Excuse me. I'm looking at the online audience, and I don't see any more additional questions. I don't see any questions from our on-site audience, so let me make my way up to you. So Rachel, thank you so much for your presentation. And I wanted to remind everybody that this presentation will remain online on this YouTube webpage, along with the presentation handouts, which includes the slides and a handout with a lot of great information and links to additional information. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.